Hello everyone and welcome to our new project, which is going to be a password cracker. So in the previous project we took a look at how we can create the password sniffer and we can combine it with our ARP spoofer in order to gather all of the passwords that the target inputs in their browser over HTTP on the same local area network. And right now we're going to deal with a little bit different thing, which is going to be a password cracker. Now this will be a rather short project and this tool will be used only in specific uses, and I will show you an example of when you can use this tool if you want. So let's get straight into this. Alright, so what you're going to need for this is you're going to need your Metasploitable virtual machine and you're also going to need your Kali Linux virtual machine. I already created this project, so we have the password cracker project. You can create it if you want. And then we're going to create a new file, so right click, new, and then Python file. And right here we can call this cracker password.py. Okay, so we got the file ready. What will this program do? Well, it is not what you might think that it will do, and you might actually think that this is some kind of a brute forcer, so we're going to crack the passwords for your social media accounts. It is not that type of thing. We're going to use this program in order to crack the hashed value of a password. Now what I mean by that is many websites and many databases store all the passwords in some hashed value, whether it is MD5 or SHA-1 or SHA-512, it doesn't really matter, they all store it in some type of a hashed value. So what happens when the database is breached? Well, we gather the usernames and we gather all the hashed values of the passwords, so we don't get the passwords. What can we do with those hash values? Well, we can use our password cracker in order to crack that hashed value and gain the actual password in plain text. So let me show you an example of this. If you go to your Metasploit and you start up your virtual machine, then you navigate to your Google Chrome and type in the IP address of your Metasploitable, and in case you don't know how to get it, you can simply just type ifconfig inside of the Metasploitable, and it will give you your IP address, which is 192.168.1.6 in my case. Once you type that in inside of this page, it will lead you to this Metasploitable 2 web page where you have a few different options. We want to navigate to the DVWA option. It will ask you for the username and password, and right now we can type admin and password. And in case you're wondering when we are going to do the different type of password cracking, which is the login brute forcing, well, don't worry, we're also going to do that later on in the course. For now on, we're just going to cover the cracking of the hashed value of a password. Okay, so let's go to the SQL injection part. Right here, this Metasploitable has its own database, and there are a bunch of users that actually belong to this database. For example, if we type 2, it will give us the user ID for someone named Gordon and Brown. Now, this person, Gordon Brown, has his own password saved inside of this database. So we're going to use an attack called SQL injection in order to actually hack this database or gather the information from that database. I'm not going to go into the details of the SQL injection, I'm simply just going to copy and paste it. And here it is, this is the full SQL injection. You should be able to see it on the screen. I will copy and paste this, so this is the SQL injection. If I go to the view and I zoom this a little bit, so you can all see in case you don't, here it is. Once I copy this and paste it right here, we will get all of the users, their surnames, their IDs, and their hashed value of a password. And this is it. This is their password. It is just not in plain text, alright? So our goal is to use our program in order to get these hashes in plain text, alright? Now, in case you're not getting this output, even though after you type the same command that I did or the same SQL injection, make sure that your security level is set to low and you can change that inside of the DVWA security, alright? So now that we got this, first thing that we need to do is we need to check out which type of hash is this. Well, the easiest way to do that is to copy the actual hash and to paste it inside of your browser. Click enter, and what this will do is it will give you the output that this is the MD5 hash. So here it is. The MD5 reverse for this was successfully reversed into string, and let's see which string is this. It is the string of password. So now we know that this actual hash value is password in plain text. But for others it might not be that easy to do that, so therefore we need to create our program for someone that has more complex password. If you type that hash value inside of your Google Chrome, it will most likely not return any result. Therefore we will need to create a program that will be able to brute force through a dictionary and compare all of the hashes until it finds a hash that matches this one right here, for example. And if they do match, that means that we found the plain text password, and we'll just print it to the screen. Alright, so that would be the basic of this program. We're going to code it in the next lecture. The entire program will be coded in the next lecture. And also one more thing before we close this tutorial. At the end of this project and at the end of this section, we're going to have a bonus lecture where I will show you how you can actually create a small program, just a few lines of code, that will try to brute force the password for the wireless networks. Alright, so thank you for watching this tutorial, and I will see you in the next lecture where we will code our program. Bye! Welcome back. Let's start off with our password cracker, or if you want to call it, the hash cracker. There is only going to be one library that we are going to need for this project, and that will be the hashlib library. So we will import it right away. Type here import hashlib. And there are three different things that we will require from the user in order to continue with the execution of the program. So the first thing is going to be the type of hash. So we need to ask the user which type of hash they want to decrypt or they want to brute force. We will give them three options, and if you want to upgrade this program after this project, you can simply just add multiple options for multiple hash values that we didn't cover. In this case, we're going to cover the MD5 hash and the SHA-1 hash. And we might just add another one if we want to. But the principle behind adding them is all the same, alright? So what we need to do is we need to specify the first variable that is going to store the type of hash, so we will simply just call it like that, type of hash. And that will be equal to the input, and we will prompt to the user which type of hash you want to brute force. And let's not forget to wrap this inside of an str function, because we want this to be a string, so we will simply just type right here str, open brackets, and at the end we want another or second close bracket. Alright, so this is the first variable that we are going to need. The second one will be the file path, or the file that we want to use in order to brute force the hash. So we'll call it like this, file underscore path is going to be equal to the string, since we want the path to be also a string, and we will add input, and we will specify to the user enter path to the file to brute force with. Simple as that. This will be a file containing all the plain text passwords. If you want, it can be a huge file. For the purposes of this tutorial, of course, we are going to create our own file, which will only store about 10 to 15 passwords. But in real life case scenarios, you would want to use a much bigger password list with plain text passwords. Also to remind you, the basic meaning behind this program is we're using the plain text passwords from that file, then we're using the hash function to create the hash value from those plain text passwords, then we will compare that hash value to the hash value that the user of this program specifies, and if they compare, that means we found the password and we will print it in plain text. Alright, so let's continue. The next thing and the last thing that we require is hash to decrypt. So we're going to call it just like that, hash to decrypt. And this will also be str. We want it to be a string, and then we will input enter hash value to brute force. Okay. So now that we got all the three parts and all the three things that we need, we can start with the main part of the program. The first thing we want to do is we want to open the file. Then we want to read the passwords and perform from there. So let's open the file first. We're going to open it with open, and we will specify that we want to open the file path, and we also want to open it for reading. We will open it as file. And right away, before we do anything else, we're going to enter the for loop and read every password line by line. So for a line, for each line inside of this password list, so inside for line in file.readlines, once again, remember that readlines function will read line by line, while as the readline function will read character by character. Then once we enter this loop, we want to check out which type of hash it is. So whether it is MD5 or SHA-1, we're going to check it with the if statement. So if type of hash is equal to the MD5, then what we want to do is we want to create a hash object variable, and we simply want to create the MD5 hash out of this plaintext password that we read from the file. So hash object will be equal to the hashlib library.md5, and we want to perform it on to the line that we read, and we want to add this strip function to it. There is also one more thing, or one more function that we need to add onto this plaintext password, and that is going to be the encode function. Without that, this program will not work. So now that we created the hash object, now we need to use the hex digest function. So we'll create another variable called hashed_word, and that hashed word will be equal to the hash object dot hex digest. After this, inside of our hashed word will be the hashed value of the plaintext password. So all we are left to do is perform another if statement in which we are going to compare this hashed value with the hash to the crypt that the user specified. Okay, so let's type it right here. If hashed word is equal to the hash to the crypt, then we're simply just going to print to the screen found MD5 password, and then let's concat it, or simply just use plus to add it. And of course we do not want to print the hashed word because this will be the hashed value, the one that we specified to the program itself. We only want to print the line which is the plaintext password for that hash. So we will print plus line dot strip, and then we can simply just exit the program because we found the password, and there is no need to actually compare the other passwords from the file as well. We'll use the code 0, which means that we returned without any errors, and this will be the entire program for the MD5 hash cracker. Let's test it out right here. Now before we do that, we need to actually find an MD5 hash, so we're going to use Firefox to open up the MD5 hash encryptor, and we will just use some random word and see whether it will work. While the Firefox is opening, we also want to create another file which is going to store our passwords, so we are going to click on new and then new file, and let's call it password file or passwordlist.txt. And here let's type some random passwords, admin, once again something random, then test1234, let's add who am I have config, it doesn't really matter what the strings are or what the passwords are, we're just adding some random stuff, and let's add password and password 123, okay? So we have the passwordlist.txt, we have our cracker right here for the MD5, all we need to do right now is we need to find an MD5 hash. So let's go MD5 encryptor, we can go to the first link, it doesn't really matter, all of these links will do the same. Okay, seems that we cannot use this one, so let's go to the next one. MD5 decrypt and encrypt. Let's see if we type password and click on encrypt. Here is the MD5 of the plaintext password. Whoops, I actually misspelled that, so I need to type password. Okay, so here it is. This is the MD5 hash of the plaintext word password. Let's copy it. Go back to our program. If we open up the terminal and run our program, so let's type Python 3, cracker password, which type of hash you want to brute force. We want to brute force an MD5 type of hash, enter path to the file to brute force with. We will use password list.txt, and the hash value is the hash that we copied from that website. Click enter, and you will see in less than a second we will find the correct password. The good thing about this program is it will run really fast, even with huge password lists. You will have no problem in completing huge password lists, as this runs millions and millions passwords per second. Now, since we are using this short password list, it will always finish in less than 1 second. Okay, so we found the MD5 password and we will print it to the screen. It is password. Now we can build up our program a little bit more. Let's add another hash as a possibility. So we're just going to go 2 steps back and we're going to compare right now if type of hash is equal to SHA-1, for example. Then we'll perform the same task, so hash object will be equal to hash lib, but this time we don't want to perform the MD5 function, we want to perform the SHA-1 function. Okay? On to the same thing, which is the line.strip. .encode, and then we will create the hashed word, which is going to be equal to hash object .hex digest. And after these 2 lines of code we have our hashed value, and all we need to do is compare it with the hash that the user specified. So if hashed word, we already did all of this, so no need to explain it twice. If these 2 are equal, we'll print found SHA-1 password, and we will print line.strip to the screen and exit the program once again. If it is not in this file, then we're simply just going to print password not in file. Okay, so we need to print this to the screen so the user of the program knows that there is not such password inside of the file that they are using, indicating that they should switch the password list. Okay, so let's test it once again, but before we do that we're going to go to the SHA-1 right now. So SHA-1 encryptor, go to the second link because it is the same link that we used right here. And now let's check for some password inside of our list. For example, ifconfig. If we try to use SHA-1 onto the ifconfig plaintext password, we will get its SHA-1 hash. So let's copy it right here. Run the program. We need to specify that we want to use SHA-1 hash. We also need to specify the password list.txt, and we will paste right here the SHA-1 hash and click on enter. For some reason it tells us that the password is not in file. Let's see why it does that. ifconfig, did I specify it correctly right here? ifconfig, so it should be good. Let's try some different words, such as for example test1234. Copy it. Go right here. Let's paste it. Here is the SHA-1 hash. Copy it. And run the program once again. SHA-1 password list.txt, and we paste the hash. Click on enter, and we do manage to find this one. Not really sure what was wrong with the ifconfig one, but it seems to work now. We found the SHA-1 password, that is test1234. Okay? Now let's do the same for the MD5. Let's go to the MD5 site, and let's try to encrypt the same password, which is test1234. Oops. Click on encrypt, and here it is. And now that I think about it, I think the reason why it didn't work the first time is because I typed ifconfig and then enter. Therefore, if you notice, if I encrypt this is the hash value, but if I encrypt it without the enter, we get the entirely different MD5 hash, and that is the reason why it didn't work the first time. Okay, so let's go back to test1234 without clicking enter. And here it is. Let's copy the hashed value, run our program again. We want to use MD5, enter the path, and enter the hash. Click on enter, and we found the MD5 password test1234. Okay, so this is our entire project. We, in just a few lines of code, managed to create the hash cracker, which will allow us to use it, for example, in case you find the SQL injection, as we showed in the previous video. We can use those hashed values and drop them inside of this program with the combination of a huge password list and gain the plain text passwords. Alright? What you can do in order to make this program better is you can simply just add all the other possible hashes as well. For example, SHA-256, SHA-512, and others if you want. You can use the same library, which is the hashlib library, and the same algorithm, which is just creating the hash value and then comparing it to the hash of the plaintext password that you read from the file. That is all there is. You can see it is rather easy to code and understand this program. So, because it was so short, I will give you a bonus lecture in the next video, as I mentioned and promised, which will show you how you can brute force wireless networks. Okay, so thank you for watching this tutorial, and I will see you in the next lecture. Bye!